Thanks for joining our session about CloudOps security. It's going to be very short. We'll talk a little bit what the product does, and I show you a quick demo, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. We also have our own booth right over this wall, so you can come over at any time. Just for a quick question, raise your hand if you know what is CloudOps security, and raise your hand if you've tried it. All right. Have you seen it? No. OK, great. So what is CASB? CASB is a cloud access security broker. This is what CloudOps security is. It's a term that Gartner made. And what cloud access security brokers do, they help organizations face two main challenges. The first challenge is that in today's world where everybody moves to the cloud, employees find ways to use their own unimproved cloud applications, right? I work at Microsoft, and I can go to Dropbox.com and sign up with my Microsoft corporate email, start uploading documents there, and my IT will never know. It just doesn't have a way, right? Some of the cloud apps are more risky, some are less, and an average organization has hundreds of different unapproved applications. So how do you manage all these risks, right? How do you decide what is approved or not, and how do you understand what's going on there? And the second, I think, biggest issue that CloudOps security will help you with is adopting the cloud. All the enterprises want to adopt the cloud for collaborations, for human resources, for many different processes. However, all those cloud applications make your life easier, but also impose a lot of security risks. The biggest of them, as we see it, is the visibility. The lack of visibility, not knowing what your users are doing there, is one of the things that a security broker will help you. So how CASBs can help? The first thing is giving you this visibility that you lost once you move to the cloud, right? When I say visibility, I mean a lot of things. So I'll give you a few examples. Which data in my organization is stored? Where are all those files? Who are they shared with? Who have access to them? And who accessed them in the last day or two, right? The second thing is about the user activities, or sometimes we look at it as like the auditing. Like what users are doing, where are they accessing from? What are these activities that we want to understand? And also to detect when there is something suspicious, right? If there is an intrusion, if one of my accounts were compromised, and there is an attacker, someone out there downloading documents, sharing stuff, changing mailboxes, forwarding phishing emails, you don't have a way to know that. So CloudOps security is one of the latest addition to Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite. The Enterprise Mobility Suite consisted from a different products, from a few products, but it's an holistic security solution. So you should look at it together, right? So we have the Azure Active Directory to manage identities and apps and secure them. You have the Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics to detect threats when your on-premise identities are hacked. You have Intune to manage mobile devices and separate corporate data from personal information on mobile devices and Windows. And you have the Azure Information Protection to protect, classify, and make sure that wherever your data goes, it's secured. So we bring all of this together into CloudOps security, which you can look at as a connector to your cloud applications, right? So once you start using CloudOps security, you get this visibility with all the identity information that we have, all the device information. You want to know, for example, if the data that you really care about, the data that is classified as sensitive, out of the billion documents that you have, you probably really care about some of them, and you want to know what happens to them. With CloudOps security, you can secure those documents if they go to Box or Salesforce or Office 365. So the three main things that you should remember that CloudOps security does is A, give you the visibility that you need to the cloud applications that you approved and also not approved, what we refer as shadow IT. The second thing, it gives you the control to be proactive and get alerts when something wrong or suspicious or not legit is happening there, whether it's with your files or with users' activities. And the third is threat detection. In this huge sea of activities that happen in every day in your organization, CloudOps security can automatically detect threats and alert you when you should take a look into the most important things that might be a compromise of an account, or a file that violates your compliance policy, and so on. So I will stop here and I'll switch to the demo so you can see the actual product. The first thing that you will start when you sign up to CloudOps Security would be the discovery. With the discovery, you can find out all the different cloud applications that are being used in your organization, whether they're approved or not approved. This is eye-opening. So the first time you'll do that, and it's really quick to like upload the network traffic logs and get this dash. Oh, sorry, you don't see my screen. I just realized. Just a second. All right. So the first thing you will do is you will come to the dashboard that you see in front of you, click on Discover, and go to the Discovery dashboard. This dashboard that was generated here was really simple. You just need to take a traffic log from your firewall or web proxy that you use in your CorpNet to connect your users to the internet and upload it to our system. And suddenly you can get visibility into the apps, how many users are using those apps, from which IP addresses, how much traffic goes there, and you can learn a lot about all the stuff. For example, I can click on the apps and get a list of all of them. All of those apps are cloud applications, right? So they are on the internet. We have many categories in today's world, like users are using cloud apps for almost doing everything, from getting a ride on Uber to like collaborate and do like their to-do list. So let's say that I have a lot of apps here. I want to focus on cleaning and sanctioning my collaboration applications. Maybe I just moved to Box or to Office 365 and I want to ensure that my users are actually using it. So let's click on collaboration category here and focus on the collaboration apps that are being used in my organization. Here I see a long list. And as you can see, we have the score here, which is sometimes 10, sometimes it's low as 3. This is how good and safe the app is. This is our automatic risk assessment score. So if I click on Office 365 to expand the information on it, I can understand why this app got 10, right? So we divide all these parameters, all these different factors we're looking at, to 3 categories. There is the general one, there is the security category, and there is a compliance. In a security, for example, I can see if this app supports multi-factor authentication, or if it uses the required HTTPS security headers. And in compliance, I can see that if this app meets the compliance standards that my organization requires, right? If it's an health organization, I want to make sure that the apps that my user stores their data on are HIPAA compliant, right? So I can find it out really quickly. I can also drill down into an app and learn more about who's using it exactly, from which IP addresses, how often, and maybe I can use that to even like go to specific users and educate them on what they should use, right? We also provide alerts. So if you want to like monitor automatically your unapproved app usage in your organization, you can set a policy. For example, whenever there is a new app that has a low score, which is risky, I want to be alerted. Or when there is a trend, when there is a spike of usage in a specific app, you can get alerted right away. So after you learn how your environment looks like, which apps are used more and which apps are less, you would probably want to focus more on the apps that you do control. These are the apps that you trust and you ask your employees to use, right? So these are we call the sanctioned applications. So very easily, in the connected apps, you can connect the apps that you care most about, right? We have an impressive list of apps already, Office 365 there, obviously, and Google Apps, and Dropbox, and Salesforce, and AWS. A lot of non-Microsoft apps, and we're keeping this list getting longer and longer. So connecting the app is very simple. You don't need to be a programmer or very technical. It's just we have a user guide that you just need to follow the few instructions, and you get the app connected. So what happens after the app is connected? Under the Investigate, we have 2 interesting parts. One is the activity log that gives you visibility into all the user activities. What they do, where they come from, who they did this operation on. Maybe they shared a document to someone else. Maybe they set a mailbox forwarding to an executive and using his mailbox for something. You can see all of that. And there's a lot of interesting filters you can try. For example, you want to see all the external activity, all the users outside your organization who access your document. Maybe you want to see if someone from your HR department has done something from a risky IP based on our threat intelligence that is leveraging the Microsoft security graph from all the billions of signals that we get every day. So this is the activity log. And the second interesting part in your investigation gives you a list of all the files you have in your cloud-based applications, such as Box and Dropbox and Office 365. And for each of these files, you can see who is the owner. Sorry, we have some networking issues here. So for each of these files, you can see who is the owner, who the file is shared with. You can find out where the file is located, in which folder, right? So a lot of interesting information. Maybe, for example, you want to investigate an incident and find out what files were modified in the last 24 hours, right? Or which files have been shared externally in the last 24 hours. So by using the filters, you can do that really easily. I can, for example, choose the public access level filter and choose a date for a specific range for the last modified date of the files. Those investigation capabilities are very powerful. Imagine like that, especially in medium and large organizations, the amounts of data and the sea of data that you see are huge. And when you need to like have an audit after an incident, these tools are super efficient and quick to find what you need in any cloud ops and any size of data you have. Sometimes, after you get this visibility, you also want to be proactive and get alerted when files are shared externally with sensitive information, or when a user is coming from a Tor network and doing something that looks suspicious. So you have under the control the policies page, which you can use to create a lot of policies. I'll show you just a few examples. So let's start with files. CloudOps Security comes with a built-in DLP, which you can use by default. You can also integrate it with your own DLP, with your on-premise DLP, such as Symantec Vunto. So this built-in DLP policy is an example for how you can find out if any files contain social security numbers and stored in like one of your controlled cloud applications, right? So this policy has this like content inspection checked it and looking for files that include social security number. You can change it to one of the other classifications that we have built in, or put your own regular expression. You can also add a filter that says, I only want to detect files with personal information if they are shared externally. So for that case, I will add the access level filter and choose external and public, right? So in the policies page, I can see how many matches we were. So I'll click on the 4 matches here in this policy and see the actual files that contain personal information and violated this policy. Let's say that I want to investigate each of these matches. So as you can see, you get a lot of information. You know which file is it, what is its name, and where it's located, which folder. You can see in which people have access to this file and who it's shared with, right? And whether it's an internal person or not, what permissions they have. And you can take a decision after examining all these informations to like authorize this violation, or maybe if it's just a test file or a false positive, or to take action such as like putting this file in a user quarantine. Another interesting example for a files policy that leverages the enterprise mobility suite that I mentioned before is an integration we recently did with Azure Information Protection. So for those of you who are not familiar with Azure Information Protection, imagine that you have billions of files in your organization, and some of them are less important, some of them are more. With Azure Information Protection, you can rely on your users and an automatic classification engine to tell you, based on policies that you define, which are the documents that you care most about, right? So usually, out of those millions of documents, you probably care about a few thousands that are more sensitive. So with CloudOps Security, you can put better control on those files, right? Let's see an example. So in this policy, we leveraged a filter that is called classification label. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the file that is in Box or Salesforce and Office, and if this file is classified as confidential, we want to take an action on it. right? For example, one of the actions that we can take is to notify the owner of the file. Or another option is to remove the external collaborations, or even making it public or putting it in user quarantine. Right. So let's take a look at these policies matches. Network is pretty slow. All right. Never mind. You got the idea. So this was the file policies using the built-in DLP. Another example of a policy is our general anomaly detection one. So every customer that goes up and signs up to the service, and you can do it like for free, there's a trial, gets a built-in policy that we call the general anomaly detection policy. With the general anomaly detection policy, CloudOps Security learns what is normal in your organization, what is not. We're looking at a lot of different factors, such as like which devices each user is usually using, from which location is usually coming from, right? Is he an admin or not? And we're trying to detect the abnormal. We're trying to find out possible threats automatically, so you can examine them yourself instead of looking at everything. Again, see that I have some networking issues. That's a bummer. Let's try to switch to another demo. Oh, bummer. All right, that's fine. So, back to the presentation. CloudOps Security brings you the visibility and control that you need into your cloud applications. It's usually a journey that you start by getting visibility into Shadow IT. Then it goes to like securing the data and the files that you have in your cloud applications based on their content, based on their classification, and based on other like custom metadata and information that you choose, such as like the file type or users that own it, or based on their departments. And then you set policies to control what is, what you allow, whether it's compliance policies, such as like sensitive information shared externally, or whether it's threat detection policies to alarm you when there is a user from a risky IP, maybe a Tor or an anonymous proxy or a botnet, trying to access a SharePoint site or a box folder that is more sensitive to you, right? So you can set all these policies. And the last part is the in-session control. Sometimes you want to find a middle ground and monitor things while they happen in real time and limit what some users can do. For example, like you can put a geofence where some things must be limited. For example, if your users are traveling for a certain country, you might want to disable the option to download sensitive information to those users' devices, right? So as just a quick summary, we talked about three things. We talked about the discovery, and we showed how the Shadow IT dashboard looks like, that shows you which apps and which users are using them. We showed you the risk assessments that we give to each app. All right, we support 15,000 applications with 60 different factors for each of them, categorizing into general, security, and compliance. And you can set up alerts to monitor the Shadow IT usage. We talked also about the information protection, and I mentioned the integration that we have with Azure Information Protection to allow you to leverage the classification of the files instead of inspecting the content and like knowing yourself if they're important or not. It's a very powerful capability. We also talked about our built-in DLP that can do content inspection and the interesting incident management tools that you can leverage within our console user interface to authorize an alert or to put a file in quarantine or suspend a user. And lastly, I didn't get to show you a demo of our anomaly detection alert, but I mentioned that we're using a lot of advanced techniques and machine learning algorithms to detect among all the sea of user activities that you have full visibility to, the things that we think might be interesting for you to look at when someone is maybe trying to compromise one of your accounts. So thank you very much. This was a quick demo, and please come over if you have any questions. Thank you very much.